The brain recognizes the difference, the mismatch. And because it is an updating process, it learns, adapts, and it predicts. It will then unlock or unwire that neural network, quite literally unwire it. It stays open for 5 hours, during which time I can feed it the truth.
Welcome to Season 2 of ADHD Difference. I'm your host, Julie Legg, ADHD advocate, author of The Missing Piece, A Woman's Guide to Understanding, Diagnosing and Living with ADHD, and an unapologetic doer of many things. This season, we're turning up the volume with a global lineup of brilliant guests, bringing their lived experiences, insights, research, strategies, and resources. And of course, along with a healthy dose of humour and humility. Whether you're neurodivergent yourself or just curious, there's something here for every curious brain. Let's dive in. Today, I'm joined by Brian DesRoches, a psychotherapist with decades of experience integrating modern neuroscience with practical, emotionally transformative work. Brian has been in private practice since the late 1980s. And has trained extensively in approaches like EMDR, brain spotting, internal family systems, and coherence therapy. His latest book, Living a Trigger-Free Life, explores something that feels almost revolutionary. At the heart of Brian's work is the neuroscience of emotional learning and a process called memory reconsolidation. In simple terms, it's the discovery that emotional memories once believed to be permanently hardwired, can actually be rewritten. This conversation is especially relevant for those navigating ADHD and complex emotional patterns. Today, we're talking about the hidden neuroscience behind self-sabotage, the feeling voice that quietly drives behavior, and why true change isn't about trying harder. It's about helping the brain learn something new. Welcome to the show, Brian.
It's good to be here, Julie. Thank you. Thank you.
I'm so looking forward to today's conversation. So I'm going to dive straight in, Brian, with the questions. You've been in private practice since the late 1980s, and you've seen multiple waves of therapeutic approaches come and go. What led you to focus so deeply on the neuroscience of emotional learning rather than the more traditional symptom management?
It's a great question. I mean, that's the essence of it is one, my own experience personally of about 17 years before I became a therapist of a variety of different kinds of therapies, some of which I could relieve some symptoms, maybe feel a little bit better, like, oh, I'm doing something. But there was no enduring, nothing ever lasted. I would relapse into old behavior patterns, frustration, negative self-talk, anxiety in certain social situations. I just, yeah, and so I had to manage all those. So what I saw when I learned about emotional learning and memory reconsolidation was that, no wonder I'm fixing not the cause of the problem. I'm trying to fix the aftermath that happens when the cause of the problem within me gets activated. That opened my eyes up to not only my own frustrations with traditional forms of psychotherapy, talk therapy, if you will, uh, that insight and understanding didn't work, but also being very aware that I just began to see the world differently, that people weren't bad. They just were protecting themselves from things that happened to them that they can't remember that they learned about the world. Williams Wordsworth, in his poem Ode to a Childhood, Intimations of a Childhood, beautiful poem, he calls it the veils of forgetting. We forget who we are as kind of cosmic beings, little children, curious, wondrous, fascinated, and we want to learn, and then we forget. And that's because we learn how to function in the world, how to adapt to survive, or our brain is learning how to adapt or survive. It's really our brain that's doing it. And that opened me up to just this whole world of possibility for change, and particularly what my triggers were about. My triggers, like, whoa, there it is again. What is the threat that I'm experiencing right now that would cause me to withdraw or placate or be nice or not accept a compliment? And it was
Mm.
quite a profound, as I say in the book, it was a paradigm shift for me. Just the world totally changed. And that's what I said, this is what I'm going to do.
I do resonate with you talking about the playfulness and the joy of childhood, and then we layer upon years of adulting when we
Yeah,
cope and
yeah,
we lose ourselves, don't we? But underneath that, we're all the child who we were, but maybe
right.
lost along the way. Very, very interesting. Thank you for that.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
one of your family members has ADHD, and you've had many
Hmm.
conversations about the emotional impact of that diagnosis. How did
Yes, yeah.
witnessing their journey shape your understanding of the triggers that you talk about, self-criticism and
Mhm.
identity?
Yeah. That's a great question because my family member was diagnosed. She was about 8 or 9, and it was hard for her. It explained a lot of things. But I went into a way of relating to her that was counteractive because I didn't know at that point in time about emotional learning and what her little brain probably learned about functioning in the world, in class, with friends, at home, that she didn't know she learned. And so when she would start making kind of self-deprecating comments, negative comments, I just don't get it, I would jump into rescuing and counteract that. Instead of engaging with her, instead of saying, tell me about that, let's talk about that, to normalize, if you will, her experience and not make it just, oh, you've got a problem. I would change totally the way I related to her. I would be less counteractive, less jumping in, more engaging. Let's talk about how we can do this. I would attempt to understand her experience as opposed to fix her experience. That would be the that 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 taught me a lot. After I learned about emotional learning, I realized, oh my gosh, if I could go back, and I've talked to her about that. I call it transformational listening. I've talked to her about it. We've had some wonderful conversations. I think healing conversations in terms of how she learned to feel and think about herself with her ADHD. And I learned a lot because I learned how to grow up and not be so reactive.
Absolutely. As a parent, I can,
Mhm.
really align with that. You want to help your child who is
Oh,
obviously
yes,
suffering and
yes,
inwardly and outwardly expressing some
yeah,
really negative self-talk. You want to come and say,
yeah.
"Oh, what a load of rubbish! You're a handsome
Eh,
young man," or there's,
there,
da 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 da.
yes,
Mm,
that is the counteractive listening. We counteract what someone says because we're uncomfortable with it. As
mm,
parents, boy, do I remember that. I would do that very differently now.
mm,
I would engage with them to know that they were heard, listened to, and understood, as opposed to, oh, you're not this. That's not listening to my daughter. I wasn't listening to her. I was trying to fix her
mm,
because I was uncomfortable. And I learned a lot about my own triggers about that when I really looked at what was going on, because that triggered me. It's like, what's wrong with me? What can't, it was a growth opportunity for me when I look back at it now, and since we've talked about it since. Yeah, as
wow.
parents, we try to do our best, and sometimes doing our best, we counteract as opposed to engage.
You were talking about triggers, and for decades, people were told that emotional memories were essentially hardwired, that we needed to
Yes,
manage the triggers better.
yes,
And then
yeah,
neuroscience introduced this memory reconsolidation,
right,
showing that emotional learnings can actually be updated. So, this is what I'm really
yes,
interested in. What
yes.
is memory reconsolidation in simple
Uh,
terms, and why is it such a
yeah,
profound shift in the way we understand
yeah.
healing?
Yeah, I love that question. I think you can tell by the way I'm smiling. My excitement around this kind of takes over sometimes, so I can feel it, my excitement around this. Um, there are two basic kinds of memory sets, if you will. There's explicit memories. I could ask you what you had for dinner yesterday, and you go, "Oh, I had beans and sausage or something," and and that's an explicit memory. Or tell me about a good event in high school or a vacation you went. We can see it, we can feel it, we know it's a memory. There's another kind of memory called implicit memory, where we have an experience, but we don't know it's a memory. An example, you probably can't remember when you used to learn to use a fork. Do you remember when you learned to use a fork? No, I
No.
don't either. But today I can pick up a fork and use it because it has become an implicit memory. I don't have to take out the book that says how to use a fork on a daily basis. I know how to drive a car, how to swing a golf club, how to use a computer. These are all implicit. I don't have to consciously bring it up. Emotional learning or emotional memories are also implicit. That is, we acquire information, our brain requires information, acquires it about experiences. And let me clear, the word experience is a Latin word. It means experare, that's its origin. It means the outcome of what one goes through. That's literally what it means. So if I have an experience of being bullied in grade school, or if I have an experience of my parents being so busy most of the time that they ignore me, and I try to get attention, I'm going to learn that trying to get attention and being ignored are synonymous. Then the emotion of being ignored when I try to get, it's painful. So I may decide to avoid getting attention. I'm going to withdraw because my brain, its survival bias, doesn't want me to feel the pain. But I don't know that I'm learning that. I don't know. In the first 7 years, in the first 15 actually, but in the first seven, we don't know that we're learning these things. And as a result, today, emotional learning, what memory reconsolidation does, prior to the turn of the century, it was thought that emotional learnings, which, by the way, emotional are in the subcortical regions of the right hemisphere, they're right down here. And we just know them by feelings. We don't know them by images or any words because they're just memories and we don't know that we acquired them. Prior to the turn of the century, it was thought that these memories were indelible. As you say, you could not do anything. Back all the way back to Freud. You could have insight. You could have understanding. Oh, I know that I avoid this because every time I did this, my father told me I was something, I was no good at it. Okay, we can have insight. But that doesn't change anything because the memory of the experience is still within me, in my brain. And
Mhm.
until I change that memory, having all the insight in the world, I know for my own self, I had a lot of insight into my variety of various maladaptive patterns of behavior. And because I couldn't change them, guess what I did? I criticized myself. What's wrong with me? I got a problem. I thought I was my brain, but I'm not. We're not our brains. And so a memory consolidation enables us to unlock or unwire or deconsolidate a consolidated memory. So it deconsolidates and it does that by introducing a what is called a threat prediction an error. So the brain's always predicting. What happens is if I introduce to the brain information that contradicts what it predicts is going to happen because of what I learned will happen in the past, and the brain is predicting it, it creates anxiety, and I introduce a prediction correction to the brain. The brain recognizes the difference, the mismatch. And because it is an updating process, it learns, adapts, and it predicts. It will then unlock or unwire that neural network, quite literally unwire it. It stays open for 5 hours, during which time I can feed it the truth. I'm good at what I do and I'm still learning. People accept me for who I am. I've been to a lot of places and people have never ignored me. I've done present. Whatever it is, we can introduce information that contradicts what the learning is, which means we have to become conscious of it. That unwiring process allows the brain to update itself. And then it reconsolidates. So we have a consolidated emotional memory. It gets activated. I introduce a correction to what that memory says is going to happen to me. Yeah, it may have happened when I was 3, but not when I'm 47. No, it's not going to happen. And so I introduce that correction. Then the brain deconsolidates that memory. It then, after 5 hours, reconsolidates back down, closes back down with the new information. So I don't get activated as much in the future. And the more you do it, the more the update sticks. Really at the synaptic level of the brain, Julie. In traditional therapy, talk therapy, let's say, you would have an awareness. Oh, yeah, because my mother was so busy and she threatened me with this, then I've learned to always be nice and placate everybody. Or, boy, I cannot accept, I have many clients, I understand as well, do not accept a compliment because people will think that you're better than them. So never accept a compliment. It's a very common one, varieties of that. So let's say I'm in a situation in which I get a compliment. Brian, great job. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And whew, that triggers me because my brain remembers if I accept, I don't know this, it's happened, but my brain goes, oh, if you accept this compliment, then you will be shamed and humiliated. People will think that, and they'll reject you. Let's say that's what my brain learned. There's the threat. If I accept it, then I'll be shamed, humiliated, and rejected. So there's the prediction. I'm now conscious of that's happening. Okay, great insight. But that doesn't change anything. But if I now get activated, and I remember all the times that I accepted compliments when people said, thank you, you did a great, I say, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. I worked, really feel good about it. And I didn't get shamed, humiliated, or rejected. Nothing bad happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at that, and while I've got my negative state in the threat state, that's the anxious state, I bring in this truth, which is, no, wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
I've accepted compliments a lot, and people haven't rejected me, laughed at me, shamed me, or humiliated. They just, yeah, we just go on with our day. When the brain recognizes the mismatch, what it's threatening is, what it's predicting is going to happen, is met with information that mismatches it. It's a contradiction. The brain has to update itself, Julie, has to do it because it's an adaptive mechanism. So it's a learning new information. And that's cooperating with evolution. I think we're cooperating with evolution as opposed to fighting it at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
When you have the negative state combined with this positive experiences coming in, the brain goes, I think I better update myself. It unlocks it at that point in time. And that unlocking or unwiring is the 5-hour process, during which time I will continue to feed my brain, hey, I remember all the times I accepted compliments. It's okay. It's okay for me to do that. In fact, it's honoring of the person that says that to me. Isn't that wonderful? Then the brain closes down with this new information. And the next time I get a compliment, the activation, the triggering decreases and decreases to practically negligible or nothing. It's a very healthy way to live because we
Very
don't get
much
as
so.
that's why, yeah, that's why we don't get activated, which is heart in the body, emotions, the nervous system, the inflammatory system, the immune system all take a beating in that process. Yeah.
And during this process, as you said, sort of deactivating the negative memory and introducing and reinforcing the new one, then that new one becomes the new intrinsic
Yes, that's the new,
memory. That's
and
great.
yes,
Wonderful.
yeah, and you're now conscious of it too. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, yeah, if you feel like sometimes I still experience my because of my childhood, my oh boy, people are going to think I'm a fraud. The imposter syndrome. I feel that sometimes. So, and I know, huh, I know where that came from. That has nothing to do with today. That has everything to do with something I learned when I was really young. And on the contrary, I can tell people what I think, what I feel, what's happening. We can have a respectful conversation. It just opens things up. I recognize what it is. It's just my brain doing my brain survival thing. That's all that's happening. That's all that's happening. It's
Absolutely
very different.
marvelous.
It's a very,
Yeah, yeah,
it's a
yeah.
very, it's a very, one of the challenges, at least for my profession, I believe, is a very different way to thinking because we're so used to counteractive measures. Yeah, oh no, let's talk about thinking positive things. Well, that's okay to do, but it doesn't change anything.
Mm.
Or when you get stressed, just get relief, do something, go for a run. That's great, but nothing changes. There's no change. So the new paradigm really allows us to evolve emotionally, probably for the first time in 250,000 years as a species.
Mm.
We
Mm.
can evolve emotionally, which we haven't done very much of in 250,000 years. We are still pretty Stone Age. As you can see in what's happening in the world, this is pretty Stone Age stuff. This is not Homo sapien, the wise one.
Mm.
So, yeah, I think I get very excited because I see the potential of us really evolving emotionally with this knowledge.
And doesn't the world need that right now? Absolutely.
Oh, yes.
Brian, I want to talk to you about internal conflict. And you use a metaphor of having one foot on the gas and the other one on the brake, meaning wanting to speak up or connect or move forward, but this invisible force that holds us back. So I know for many ADHDers know this
Yeah,
feeling very well. What's actually
yeah,
happening neurologically in these moments
yeah.
of internal
Oh,
conflict?
yeah, that's and we all have that experience where we want to do something, but boy, it's like I put my foot on the gas because I want to go there. And at the same time, I put my foot on the brake. It's like, and that's hard on the engine. That's really hard on the engine. So what's happening is the brain has taken in some information, a stimulus, or an internal, I want to do something. I'm in a meeting, I'm in a business meeting with my team, and they're talking about problems, and I know that I could contribute. I've got some knowledge and information, and I want to do it. But my experience of speaking out when I was young was that people laughed. So I learned that speaking out and shame, laughter, being humiliated, they got fused as a learning in my brain. My brain learned if you do this, that's going to happen. So I'm in this meeting and I'm 35 and we're having a meeting and I want to add to it. Foot on the gas. Oh, I can add to this. And the brain goes, stop. It creates anxiety. We feel this tightness in our body right away. The body's sign that there's a threat here if you do this. And we feel it. And it was like, wait a minute. Oh, I can't. Foot on the brake. And we sit there, and what's happening, the brain has perceived a potential threat based on something it learned in the past.
Mm.
If I really get involved, if I really fall in love with someone, they will consume me, which is unfortunately a common one for many people. I will be
Mm.
lost, but it's not conscious. So the brain perceives the information from inside or outside. It does its always doing a threat assessment all the time. So it does its very quick threat assessment, very quick. It determines, oh, you learned this back then. Then it generates anxiety because it says, don't go there. So we start to feel anxious. Anxiety is telling us there's a threat here. There's no threat, but to the brain there is. To the brain there is a threat. And it's very real to the brain. And it feels very real to us. And the brain then activates anxiety. The anxiety activates a protective mechanism, conflict, criticism, avoidance, withdrawal, placating, people pleasing, addictions. The brain then activates a protective mechanism that are commonly the problems or the symptoms that we bring to psychotherapy to be fixed. And we get a relief, but we don't get change because the real cause is the learning. If I do this, then this will happen. I may have acquired that 30, 40, 50. In some cases, I can tell you 70 years ago with some of my clients that are in their 70s and 80s. It's like, whoa, wow. They just realize where
Mm,
they acquired this learning, and then we can change it. So it's a sequence that happens in the brain that information comes in, the brain does its threat assessment, determines that what I want to do or what's happening is a threat based on something it learned in the past, activates anxiety. Anxiety activates a protective mechanism, and my foot's on the brake.
I can personally relate to that, Brian. I remember I was diagnosed when I was 52, so I had
Oh,
years of
mm,
undiagnosed life, and I
mm,
recall being very nervous and anxious about conflict, any kind of
mm,
conflict, particularly say in a
mm,
corporate environment where I wanted to
mm.
speak out
Yeah.
and to say my piece. And I now understand it, but at the time I could be quite blunt with my words. I had lots of energy. I could
Mm,
talk very fast. It might
right,
not come,
right.
and I was almost afraid of myself. So in
Yes.
comes the threat of the conflicts. And the ramifications of that is that I felt invisible. I felt that I never really got to say
Mm,
what I thought was
mm,
really important. And so this loop,
mm,
I can completely
mm.
relate to this loop.
Oh,
Now,
yeah.
now
And the
I know what it
feeling
is,
of
and it's just
invisible. Yeah, yeah.
because I didn't get to have my say. I didn't get to stand up for myself in a way that I thought I truly deserved. Very,
Yeah.
very interesting. It's
Yeah.
all making sense, but at the time, yeah, lots of unpacking to do for sure.
So I'm just curious for yourself. I mean, here you are doing a podcast. You're very visible. You're putting yourself out there. You're you're using your voice to influence
Yes,
people and to bring knowledge. That that's very different than sitting in a business meeting and not saying how you wow. Wow.
yeah. However, since my ADHD diagnosis
Mm,
and many, many insights and lots of understanding, I
mhm.
have blossomed insofar as I know that I have something to say and I really want to have this conversation. And I guess that passion and drive um,
Wow.
allows me to do this,
Wow.
whereas I didn't understand
Wow.
it before. Yeah.
Wow. So what I hear is that you recognize, wait a minute, I have gifts to bring, I have things I want to say, I have a voice that I want to share. I have experience, being an actor, I have experience with being and expressing. And what I hear, that's a form of memory reconsolidation right there. Right there it is. You introduce to the brain, so wait a minute, I've got a lot of whoa. And so you introduce to the brain information that contradict, oh, you better, I'm invisible, I better stay to safety. And wow, wow. It's very surprising when I talk to people with this, they start creating experiences of memory reconsolidation for themselves with friends at parties. I call it a real-time transformation by being aware of the learning and then pushing beyond, taking the foot off the brake and
Mm,
finding what the brain predicted, it didn't happen. No, it didn't, did it? It didn't, didn't. And the brain just goes, okay, well, update time. Yep.
wonderful. So I'm
Yeah,
glad.
it is.
Yeah, yay for updates, I say. Why does trying harder and being more disciplined or using willpower really solve that kind of
Mm.
self-sabotage?
Well, that's a great question. And first, let's look at it from a cultural perspective. In our Western culture, trying harder, doing more, pushing, is very much, I remember reading an advertisement for a workshop, and the advertisement said, battle your negative beliefs, fight against the feelings. And I thought to myself, oh my God, we're doing inside what's happening outside in the world. No. And there are many forms of therapy, experiential therapies, such as internal family systems or somatic therapies, that don't do the counteract. They do the invite. They invite that experience. And so, what is so critical is when you recognize you're self-sabotaging, anything that you do that you feel or I'm sabotaged is a protective mechanism. Your brain is doing it because that's what it's supposed to do, is to protect you. It doesn't know it's self-sabotage. It's just doing its job, and it does it well. Unfortunately, it's using old information to do it, which then causes the withdrawal, the avoidance, the conflict, the negative talk. Recognizing, my experience personally and professionally, is recognizing those patterns. When behaviors become patterns, that's when we really need to look at it, because it's become so automatic. And so if I push harder, what am I looking at? If I'm going to push through, I'm going to fight. I'm actually looking at the problem. I am actually reinforcing the very thing that I want to change. There in neuroscience, there's a kind of a statement. It's called the quantum Zeno effect. And it's basically this: what you focus on, you strengthen. And so people will say, I don't want to be unhappy. Okay. They're looking at themselves unhappy and they're reinforcing unhappiness, as opposed to, I want to be able to deal with feelings of unhappiness in a positive way. How can I do that? What creates that feeling? Let me explore that. Instead of fighting it, you look at what's behind this. What thoughts, feelings, what experience, what awareness is out there? Yeah, that's so pushing against. Yes, we do it. It's so easy. I even fall back with clients even now, and even though I've been doing this for this form of, if you will, healing and transformation for about 11 years now, I have found even now, sometimes I'll counteract. I'll say, no, you don't. Let's talk about, and I recognize, Brian, you're doing this because you're uncomfortable, not because they're uncomfortable. You're doing it because you want to fix them instead of helping them heal and transform themselves. That's an acute awareness. It's very different. It's very different. Yeah.
Brian, you're an author, of course, and your book, Living a Trigger-Free Life. And you talk about that understanding and emotion and managing emotional reactions often don't create enduring change, which we've talked about. And
Right.
these calming techniques don't necessarily eliminate the actual trigger.
Right.
Why have these counteractive approaches like positive thinking or surface level regulation become so dominant?
You know, I really have to look at that myself, both personally and professionally, to try to and you can't do something about something that you don't know or you can't see. Example, I like to play golf, and I'm trying to improve my putting. So I'll get some, I'll go, here's how I putt. I'll use that as feedback so I can revise my stance and the way I hold the club and all kinds of things. I'm basically learning and adding to my learning and improving it. The predominant model for change, either you change the subconscious, change your subconscious beliefs, which is possible to do, but it's the unconscious experiences that are driving all the vast majority of problems that people experience. It isn't subconscious beliefs. But we try to reprogram our subconscious, and because that's the only thing we could do based on the information that we had at that point in time. And for the majority of the 20th century, based on that experience, that's all we could do. Insight, understanding, develop a different neural network, think differently, think positive thoughts, uh, uh, exercise, meditate. These things are all good uh, and important, but they don't really change the underlying cause of the problem or symptom to begin with. And with that neuroscience, particularly the neuroscience of memory reconsolidation, that's changed the ballgame. Once again, a paradigm shift. I think it'll be 10 to 30 years before our models of helping people transform change. It'll at least be at least a generation, maybe two, because it's so radically different. It's so radically different. We're not used to engaging with our emotions, and we're not used to it. We particularly negative ones is like push them away. And because that's what we've learned, that's been the only model, if you will, or template. That's changing, fortunately, with the work of like the Coherence Therapy Institute. Hopefully, my book will have some influence on that. I don't know, but it's just a different way of thinking. A different way of thinking, and we all know that different ways of thinking are uncomfortable for all of us as a species because we have to develop new patterns, and that's hard to do. That's just hard to do. Yeah.
If the old ways don't work, though, would be absolutely foolish not to try new ways,
I,
alternative ways.
I, yeah, that's that. I couldn't agree more. Um, it's uncomfortable,
Mm.
and I know when I first started using this process and this understanding, I wrote a 10-page little thing for my clients, and I realized that it wasn't enough. So I spent 7 years researching to get to produce this book because it has drawings in it about what's happening in the brain so that people really understand this is not hocus pocus. This is not this is very real neuroscience that we can now apply like a technology. I call it a human technology because its application produces predictable results in terms of transformation.
With the release of your book, Living a Trigger-Free Life, um, what's happening right now? What feels meaningful or hopeful to you right now? What's happening in your world right now?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. All of us, I do believe, all of us as human beings want to create a world of connection, a world of belonging where we feel like we belong and we want others to feel like they belong. That there's a sense of, there's a lot of research going on right now in terms of consciousness and how we can raise our level of consciousness and awareness instead of division, unification and unity. And I believe, Julie, that is a spiritual process. I think the cosmic child, the cosmic being, we see that with babies. What happens when you see a baby? There's a feeling that happens inside of us, a feeling, or we see a young child playing, and it's like, wow, that still lives in us. That curiosity, that awe, that connection with nature and with each other. But we have forgotten it because we've had to adapt to the world of being a human being as opposed to a spiritual being. So I'm very interested in doing a lot of research around what lies underneath the learnings that we had to acquire to adapt to the world as a human being. What lies underneath? And so I'm doing a lot of research around that. I find that fascinating.
Wow. And hopefully another book will explain it all to the rest of the
I hope
world.
I would. Thank you very much. That's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm hoping too. Certainly, yes. Yeah,
Wonderful.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Bringing the conversation back to ADHD, I've got a couple of questions for
Yes,
you, especially
yeah.
for ADHDers who have internalized these messages of being too much
Right,
or not
right.
enough. How can understanding these patterns as protective rather than defective restore self-trust?
That's self-trust is really that is absolutely a wonderful term to use. First thing is to recognize that, and you said it well, learning, because it's having ADHD, regardless of where you are in the spectrum, because that label tends to associate it and connote certain things. Those who have it, and I've had people tell me I do. I've not been diagnosed, but sometimes I wonder. And yeah, sometimes I do. But I've we I know for my daughter, for example, has internalized that there's something wrong with me. My brain doesn't work right. It's not normal. And to say, wait a minute, no, first of all, you're not your brain. Secondly, you learn some things because you have a brain that functions in this way that you can work with. And what is the truth of that? And the real truth is you're curious. You sometimes can be very divergent in your thinking. You're very creative. There's a lot of positives that don't get integrated into the negatives of being someone who has what I personally think ADHD is kind of a neurodivergent thing. We're, as a species, going through an evolution in terms of the brain. And what we're seeing out there is this evolutionary process as we evolve as a species. And so I tend to put it in that light that and people with ADHD are kind of forerunners of how the brain needs to prepare itself for the future. Um, and I tell people laugh when I say that, but I firmly believe that. I don't think this is it's an evolutionary process, is what I believe. And so being able to see, wait a minute, what are the gifts of having ADHD? And there are gifts. There are gifts. My daughter's discovered, and she's had to plan and work with things. And then take the gifts, and when you get in this negative, oh my God, there is something wrong with me. I'm scattered again. No, you're not. Your brain is just interested in a variety of things. Let's allow that interest to be there. And how do you develop the focus? In other words, you do a mismatch with the negatives
Mm.
because of the labels and the way they've been applied. You know, that's one thing. I think that's part of me. And secondly, to remember, I'm not my brain. Just like I'm not my heart and I'm not my liver, I'm not my stomach. I'm not my lungs. I have them. I have a brain, but I'm not my brain. So how do I work with my brain given that it functions this way? And that kind of puts it in a different perspective.
Can't wait to read your book, actually. That really intrigues me and will reinforce a
Thank
whole
you.
bunch of beliefs that I
Yes, it
do
will.
mirror
It
there.
will. It's a lot of examples, lots of examples, a lot of stories in there, personal stories, but a lot of client stories to give examples of how do you do this? How do I update my brain? And fortunately, the science is so clear. The 5 steps are very clear to do it. Does it take work? Yeah, because it's a different way of thinking. Does it work? Yes, it works. It works.
Thank you so much, Brian, for joining me on the show today. I really appreciate your time and knowledge. It's just been terrific. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Julie. Many blessings to you on your journey and to everybody out there that's listening to you. Many blessings.